Hey everyone, this is Marc Saltzman. I'm the host of Tech It Out, a weekly podcast that breaks down geek speak into street speak. But you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast hosted by John Swinimer.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with tech expert Marc Saltzman about his thoughts on the future of consumer technology. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Based in the Toronto, Ontario area, and with 30 years of industry experience, Marc Saltzman is a recognized and trusted technology and gaming evangelist in North America. Marc is a freelance journalist for more than 40 publications, including a syndicated column with USA Today, a prolific 16-time author, radio and television personality, and public speaker. Marc specializes in consumer electronics, online technology, business tech, interactive entertainment, and future trends. As a fellow podcaster, Marc is the host of Tech It Out, airing more than 100 times a week on radio stations across the U.S. Tech It Out is a weekly one-hour show devoted to making sense of our fast-paced digital world. The show covers consumer electronics, new apps, and social media, interactive entertainment, and business tech. But no need for a geek English dictionary. There's also a syndicated Tech Out interstitial 1-minute feature that airs daily on 425 radio affiliate stations, including Sirius XM's Radio Classics Channel 148. So without further ado, here's my chat with tech expert Marc Saltzman about his thoughts on the future of consumer technology. So Marc Saltzman, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
And thank you for the invite, John. This is great.
I appreciate your time. We've known each other for, it's been a dog's age, but this is the very first time that we've done a podcast together. Isn't that amazing?
That is true. Well, when we first met, there was no such thing as a podcast.
That's true.
We should clarify that. I think we're going back a quarter of a century, if not more.
And no internet either. That was bizarre.
Well, there was internet, but maybe the web was new, like not the World Wide Web in the mid-90s for sure. That's when I got in the industry. Yeah.
Well, before I get to all the questions, I've got something to ask you. I would like to know, what was the first comic book that you read?
Ooh, well, I think I was more of a DC guy when I was younger. So going back, it was definitely Batman, Superman, that ilk. And I remember also having an oversized version of the first Superman. That was not an official comic book, but it was like a gift from, I think it was my grandmother. And then Twilight Zone after that. So this was based on still my favorite TV show of all time. But, I'm going back to the originals, 1959 to 63. I had the comic books, and I still have them, for Twilight Zone. Yeah, I'm a big collector of anything Rod Serling and Twilight Zone. Yeah.
That is cool. Now, as you mentioned off the top, you have a podcast. Could you just talk a little bit about what you're doing right now? I mean, you're a tech guy, but you've got a podcast on the go. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit more what it's all about and who is it for?
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity. So the podcast is called Tech It Out, and it's a weekly 39-minute podcast. And it is on terrestrial radio stations as well. It's on over 100 stations in the States, even though I host it from Toronto. And it's meant to not just celebrate technology, but to demystify it. So my catchphrase, if you will, is that I try to break down geek speak into street speak. I don't want to alienate anyone with all the jargon, that makes your eyes roll, megapixel this and terabyte that and gigahertz this, like who needs it? And so I try and I encourage my guests to also try to talk plain English, like not so much inside baseball. It's a very interview heavy podcast. I usually have 3-4 interviews every weekend. And again, it's a cross section of all things technology. It's not just, gaming or laptops or home entertainment or mobility. It's everything, the gamut. And yeah, I like that variety. There's a lot of variety within each show as well, unless I have the odd special here and there, like CES, where I know you were also in Vegas at the Consumer Electronics Show. That's a bit of a different thing, a couple times a year, but it's a free for all every week. So yeah, having a lot of fun, and it's on all the big podcast platforms like Spotify or Apple. Um,
That's pretty
Google is
cool.
gone, but
Yeah.
yeah, Amazon, Audible, iHeartRadio, and so on. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And then
Yeah.
for my other work, I'm a freelance journalist. So my day-to-day gig is I write articles for about 20 or so publications, very mainstream stuff. Again, it fits kind of my MO to explain tech in plain English. So USA Today, Reader's Digest, AARP, which is for aging adults, and in Canada, Zoomer, same sort of demographic. I write for Forbes, Costco Connection magazine. I have a weekly column in Canada through Post Media newspapers every Sunday. So in print and online, like the Toronto Sun and National Post and Montreal Gazette, and so on. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it. I love being freelance, and I do it all from Thornhill, just north of Toronto.
Wow, that's cool. I tell you, you need every second of your day to keep up with all this technology. I mean, I don't think you have any downtime. Technology is always changing, that's for sure.
Oh, without question. Yeah. And it has, I've been doing this for over 30 years. It can be exhausting. I always say like the tech industry is kind of like dog years. It's like 100 years, really. In any other industry, 30 years in tech is like 100 years plus. But I still love it, thankfully. I mean, I'm still super passionate about it, but you're right. It can be tough to keep on top of everything, because it evolves so rapidly.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Now you mentioned CES. We were both there. We didn't see each other though. I tell you, because it was
With two
just
and
a
a half
crazy
million
show.
square feet of
Oh
show
my,
floor space, not a surprise that I didn't
no,
see it, but
that's right.
it's my loss.
No, so I've been doing a little bit of coverage for the show, doing interviews and stuff like that. But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts? What did you see that really stood out to you when you were at CES?
Well, I don't know if there's any pervasive themes other than AI, everything. But other than that, there was a handful of products that I thought were standouts that I wrote about for different publications. So I can just sort of cherry pick some of my favorites.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I won't spend too much time on any of these, but if any of your listeners want to ping me for a deeper dive, I'd be happy to chat. I think my favorite laptop was not the one that has a bendable screen that expands, that Lenovo laptop. It was an Asus ZenBook A14 with a battery that lasts north of 32 hours.
Wow.
I've never seen a laptop that lasts that long. And I actually used it that week, and I left the charger in my hotel room. And I think by the end of the week, I was still at more than half, and I used it a lot. So I've never seen, like, the battery life is really getting amazing. So that's ZenBook A14 from Asus. I think it's out in a month or two. Another cool product is I love reading books, digital books primarily, just because I like the convenience of having a ton of books on an iPad, but you can't read it outside. That's the one thing, right? So then I also have an e-reader. I'm fortunate enough to, with what I do for a living, I have a Kindle and a Kobo, whatever. So if I'm going on vacation, I'm reading outside, great. However, if you don't want or can't afford two devices, and really it's a no-brainer that finally one company's putting them into one device. So it's from TCL. They're best known for their TVs, but it's called the Next Paper 11 Plus. It's kind of hard to do it justice in an audio-based podcast, but essentially it looks like an iPad. It's an 11.5-inch Android tablet that's super colorful, but it's got a matte display. It's not glossy. And then you press a button on the top and it turns into an e-reader, like an e-ink display. The grayscale and better battery life, no glare. So you can read it outside. So I really like that if you're into reading ebooks. Another product that I like, John, and you've probably, if you didn't see it at CES, you might have read about it. It's a robotic vacuum that can also pick up things on the floor.
Oh, okay.
So it's called the Roborock Ceros Z or Z70. It looks like a Roomba. It's like a circular, autonomous vacuum cleaner / mop hybrid, but it has a retractable arm out of its top. And if it sees with its camera something like Kleenex, a tissue on the floor, it'll pick it up and put it in the garbage can, in the trash can for you. Similarly, if it sees socks, it'll pick it up, put it in a hamper. Like, you train it through the app where everything should go that it picks up. It's limited. I think it's got like 6 or 7 things that it can detect right now, but it'll add more over time. That's it's an update. So I really thought that was clever. I guess one more, it's kind of like not so much a practical device, but kind of a wow gadget. And I'm happy to chat about others as well, but I don't want to turn this into a monologue.
No,
You're
no.
interviewing me. But one more is, I guess, the LG OLED T television or signature OLED T. T stands for transparent. So it's a 77-inch OLED TV, which OLED is those super thin TVs that where every pixel is its own light source. So you don't need a backlight. So that's why they're super thin, and they give you that unbelievable contrast. The darker blacks gives you more of depth in your movies and all that, instead of it being gray because there's a bright backlight behind that dark pixel. It makes it look a little overblown. So not only is it an OLED TV, but as I've hinted at, it can be transparent when it's turned off. So it'll
Oh,
blend into the decor of your room. So when you're watching it, it's opaque like any other TV. Like, you're watching whatever, you're binging something on a streaming service or playing a game or watching a sports match, something, that's going to look like any other TV. But when it's turned off, you can either have it see-through like a window, and therefore you don't have to have it mounted to your wall. You can have it somewhere else in your home, certainly a conversation piece, or you can have digital information superimposed on that screen. So it looks like it's see-through, but you may have virtual, like fish, for example.
oh,
So it looks
okay.
like an aquarium, where you can
Right.
see the other side of the aquarium, like a real one would have that same effect. So it's kind of neat. If you didn't get a chance to see it at the LG booth in the central hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center, but I thought that was really cool. It's coming December. And again, it's not the most practical thing, and it certainly is not going to be one of the least expensive device that we've talked about so far. But that was pretty cool for me. I really like that.
That's cool. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff on the floor that was trying to catch your attention. Like it was just overwhelming to some point. It's like, what do I look at now with all the screens and all the people trying to get you
Yeah,
to look
well,
at it? So, yeah,
that's probably normal for many trade shows, where they try to lure you into the booth, flashing lights and dance music and whatever. Or before it was politically incorrect, we would call them booth babes, attractive women that are there to lure, convention attendees into coming into the booth. But certainly a show like CES, there's a lot of, there's a lot of excitement, and a lot of companies are spending money to have these multi-million dollar booths that are pretty attractive. Like, you want to go in and spend some time there naturally
sure.
with the
Yeah,
coverage, right?
absolutely. Now, we've both been in the tech industry for a long time. You've mentioned 30 years. I'm not going to say how long I've been, but are you finding that it's getting a little more difficult to be excited by all these new tech offerings?
When I started out, I was one of the younger guys on the circuit, and there was always guys who are now my age who, I always thought in the back of my mind, oh, there's like grumpy old curmudgeons, they've seen it all. They've heard every pitch from every PR person. And, I thought, oh, I hope I don't turn into that. Like, I still want to feel the magic of these devices. And for the most part, I still do, is the short answer. Yeah, I still genuinely get excited about certain products. There are some that are like, I roll my eyes, where these companies spend so much money on an annual smartphone that looks and feels just like the one that came before it. It's almost like 90% of their investment is in marketing and 10% is in innovation. And so I sometimes like go, okay, come on, like, who cares? Different colors, slightly better camera. It's, to the average person, that doesn't mean anything at all. And so I love when I still stumble upon something that's truly innovative, and yeah, it can be a little tiresome. There's a lot of Me Too's, especially in their defense. These companies, like, in today's economy, so many companies are risk adverse. They just don't have the money, or their investors get antsy if they try something radically new, but at the same time, there's a lot of copycats out there. So, I'm selective about what I get excited about. And if I gushed about every single product that I got a chance to review, number one, it wouldn't be genuine because I don't feel that way. But number two, you kind of lose credibility as a reviewer, right? Like, if you like everything. I remember there was a Simpsons episode where, boy, I'm dating myself. Homer Simpson became a food critic, and he
Oh,
loved every meal he got for free. And somebody said to him, Homer, people don't like your reviews anymore. I'm paraphrasing here,
hmm.
because you love everything. Then he hated everything going forward. Every single meal he had was terrible. He went like the other way, right?
Oh no.
But no, I still get excited about tech, but I don't fall for the same, I think, traps that, when you're younger and you're new and everything is so shiny and stuff, it's easy to get excited about. But no, I still have that. That spark is still there. But there's what I find with tech is just that it's a lot more evolutionary than revolutionary. There's very rarely is there something like, wow, like shut the front door.
Yeah.
I would argue, I think ChatGPT did that for me back in November of 23, where I was like, this is really smart. And it wasn't a gadget, right? It was conversational AI or generative AI that just took what Google was doing or Bing or whatever to the next, or Alexa, whatever, to the next level, like umpteen times. I saw the potential, I think, right away. It's nice when that comes like out of nowhere, so hopefully there'll be more of those going forward.
Now, speaking of the future, and you mentioned that you're invited to see a lot of new technologies that don't often become available until way down the road.
Yeah.
Can you give us a hint? I know that you're under NDA for a lot of stuff, but just a hint of what you think will be a popular consumer tech product this year, or a genre, perhaps, if you can't be specific.
Maybe not this year, but I've sat in a bunch of autonomous vehicles that are really, really getting good. Level 3, level 4, where it's like one day we will, not this year, but one day we will hop in a car and we're going to basically have on an app, or you'll use your voice when you sit in the vehicle where you want to go, and it'll take you from point A to point B with no human driver at all, safely. You'll be able to sleep, you'll be able to work, whatever you want to do on that commute is entirely up to you. But it's really getting there, with a combination of cameras and sensors and, LiDAR and radar and sonar. And like, there's so many different technologies that work there, but it's getting really great. So I can tell you that some I can talk about, some I can't, but I've been in a lot of autonomous vehicles. I've used some rideshare services like Waymo in the US, where it is an app. It's like Uber or Lyft, but there's no driver. There's a little bit of smoke and mirrors with some of these companies where there might be somebody remotely helping the AI drive the car, like sitting in almost like with a steering wheel, like a video game system somewhere in a warehouse. So it may not be truly autonomous just yet. Some are getting help from a human driver just in case. Yeah, it's pretty wild. So that's one thing.
That's
not
cool.
this year. Not this year.
Yeah.
Another one that's a little bit far out that I'm particularly excited about is domestic robots. So this is also going to be a culmination of several industries and disciplines that all have to mature. They're all evolving at different rates, but it's an engineering marvel. It's AI. It's to have a bipedal humanoid that is intelligent and is, mobile and nimble enough to walk around and help out around the house, cooking meals, cleaning up after itself, getting the kids ready for school, that kind of thing. It's a matter of when, not if. But I find that pretty exciting. And so I've visited a few robotics companies over the years, and I always, make a beeline right to those kinds of booths at shows like CES to see where we're at. Yeah. And when they're ready to show stuff like that, it's usually, they've got way better stuff that they just aren't ready to show yet for competitive reasons or legal, there's, yeah. So I'm excited about robots. I think that's going to be very exciting. So yeah, between autonomous vehicles and domestic robots, those are two industries that I'm paying a lot of attention to. And then there are some that are just still very sci-fi, like flying cars and stuff like that.
Yeah, it sounds like the Jetsons all over again.
Yeah,
that's
right?
what it sounds like.
Exactly. We'll have Rosie the robot cleaning our home.
Sure.
Hopefully we won't, if I remember correctly, that show, which is a bit before my time, actually, I think their food was in pill form, so I hope we don't get to that. Didn't they have a machine that where they would eat a pill and it would taste like whatever meal they? Hopefully, that's a little too far.
Yeah, that's a little too far. Let's not worry about that. That's for sure. Now, you mentioned that you've got a podcast and you're always busy. Where can people find you on your podcast online? Where should they go?
Yeah, thanks. So again, if you just Google Tech It Out and my name, Marc Saltzman, Marc with a C, you should be able to find it. Again, it's on all the major podcast platforms. If your listeners are on social media, I link to interviews that I do on the podcast and I promote it pretty heavily. Hopefully not too much, but yeah, of course I got to promote it. So yeah, it's Marc Saltzman, Marc with a C. I'm on X and Blue Sky, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and so on. Or my website, marcsaltzman.com. it really does need a refresh. And now that CES is done and some other travels, I was in San Jose with Samsung and New York with Apple and Beats, and got a little bit of time for my next trip in March. So I'm going to refresh my site, but my site has, links to articles that I write and videos that I'm on TV and podcasts. There's a whole tab on the whole podcast. So yeah, it's a weekly podcast. There's also a daily 1 minute sort of syndicated tech minute that also runs on satellite radio and on radio stations across the States and in Canada. But for the full podcast, Tech It Out, it's a weekly show that they can sign up for free, of course. Thank you.
Sounds good. Well, Marc, those are all the questions I have. And I know we could go on for days and days, but is there something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview?
Oh, thanks, John. I shared almost a half dozen of my favorite CES picks. There's more. So if someone wants to type in CES 2025 in my name in a search engine, they'll probably find some other picks, including a coffee machine that you never have to refill because it pulls in moisture from the air as water. That was kind of neat. So anything like that, if people like that kind of stuff. And even though I said it's not coming anytime soon, I wrote about a flying car, flying drone that you sit in as well. So yeah, if people just want to look up that stuff. But no, I think we've covered everything. And I appreciate the questions and the invite to be on your podcast, John.
Thanks to Marc for the chat. You can discover more about Marc online at marcsaltzman.com. That's MarcSaltzman.com. And on Instagram at instagram.com/Marc Saltzman. Plus many more social media platforms. And thank you for tuning in to the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to the full conversations and discover more about insight into creating comic books and graphic novels. I encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to John at truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.